So imagine being able to buy a new Rolex for 50% off retail. Actually, I know some of you guys are having a chuckle because you can remember the days when you used to be able to get a discount on a Rolex. But the last couple years, especially with the entry-level variants, it's a steal if you can get it at retail if you got a connection with an authorized dealer. Because the reality is so many of the desirable models are being resold on secondhand markets for markups of 50, 100, 200%. But gents, what if I were to tell you there's a way to get a Rolex without paying Rolex prices? A brand that has the same founder as Rolex. In fact, this brand for years used mostly Rolex parts, maintained the same quality standards as a Swiss watchmaker, yet to this day still charges 1/3 what Rolex does for similar models. So the heritage watch brand I'm talking about today was founded in 1926 by the same Hans Wilsdorf that founded Rolex in 1905. Hans had a vision to create a watch that had the same reliability and quality standards of Rolex, but at a more affordable price. Now, the official founding of the company came later in 1946, and although it operated as a separate entity, it was always backed by Rolex. Now, initially, the brand's emblem was a stylized rose with a shield. The idea here is the rose symbolized passion and elegance, and the shield symbolized strength. In the 1960s, sadly, they decided to drop the rose, and they went to a straight shield. The watch company I'm talking about today, if you haven't figured out, gentlemen, is Tudor. Now, apparently Hans Wilsdorf chose the name as he wanted to pay homage to the Tudor period in England, which ran from 1485 to 1603. He wanted the sense of historical grandeur and enduring design. Now, Tudor's first major release came in 1952. This was the Tudor Oyster Prince collection. Now, this collection utilized the same oyster case that had made Rolex famous. The Prince moniker was used to represent the elegance and technical excellence. And the marketing for its time was decent. They focused in on scientists who were spending time in Greenland, being exposed to temperatures like down to -30 degrees Celsius. So they showed and they had these guys measure and use the watches, and they performed flawlessly. Now, in 1954, they started to get into dive watches, and they released the first Submariner. Now, technically, they weren't the first ones to do this. Rolex, the year before, had released their Submariner, but the Tudor Submariner was awesome, and technically, it was sound. Waterproof down to 100 meters, it was very similar to the Rolex design, but more affordable. And at this point, you may be wondering, how did Tudor make their watches more affordable, and why were Rolexes more expensive? It was all about the movement. You see, Rolex movements, the inner workings of the watch, were made in-house. Tudor, they actually used third-party movements. Now, is this a big deal to the average guy? Probably not. But I know to watch enthusiasts, it is a big deal, so I could see why Rolex was able to command the price they did. And in addition, Rolex was spending a lot more money on marketing, and they were positioning themselves more than just a tool watch. These were going to become a fashion icon. Tudor, on the other hand, would take a different direction. That Submariner, they would continue to refine it. They would continue to make it better. Over the next few decades, they continued to improve the water resistance, and they went their own direction with the design. And on a side note, I do want to point out in the 1950s and 60s that Tudor did do a number of advertising campaigns. They were going after basically saying they were the Rolex for the younger man. And at that time period as well, they also focused on the markets of Australia, Hong Kong, and certain parts of Europe. In fact, one of their earliest, most important associations was in the 1960s with the French Navy. Tudor supplied the French Navy with their Submariners and actually adjusted the design and the build quality of them to actually meet those military standards. As you can imagine, this association gave Tudor a bit more of standing because they had to meet these exacting standards, and they were able to do it under high-pressure situations. Now, this association led to other contracts and other connections. So in the 1970s, the United States Navy was supplied Tudor watches. We also saw them supply watches to the Canadian Navy and the Jamaican Defense Forces, which, if you ever find one of those defense watches, apparently they are a highly prized collector's item. So keep your eye out for them. Now, throughout the 1970s and a big part of the 80s, Tudor and a number of other Swiss manufacturers went through a very tough period, known as the Quartz Crisis. This was a time period when highly accurate watches coming out of Japan using quartz movements flooded the market. They were inexpensive. They actually did what most people wanted at the time, was just tell accurate time, and they did it better than these expensive mechanical watches. Now, Tudor did release in 1976 their first quartz watch known as the Oyster Date, but yeah, it didn't make much of a difference. And the reality is so many people now had other options, and they were choosing to go with cheaper, more accurate watches. Now, throughout Throughout the 1990s through most of the 2000s, Tudor kept relatively quiet, but in 2007, they started to make a comeback. And that year, Tudor launched a number of different models. This included an updated Prince Date Day, and they also started to play with more daring, loud, sporty designs. We saw this with the Grand Tour series. But all of this was a warm-up to what we saw happen in 2010. That's when they introduced the Heritage line and the Tudor Heritage Chrono, one of the more beautiful modern watches out there. This is a modern reinterpretation of the classic Tudor Monte Carlo chronographs from the 1970s. In my opinion, they're a beautiful blend of vintage aesthetics with modern watchmaking, and that's what made them such a huge success. In 2011, Tudor released the Heritage Advisor, and in 2012, the brand released what would become its biggest success, the Black Bay. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Tudor had all that history with the Submariner designs, and that's what the Black Bay took from. The distinctive feature of the Black Bay is that big crown, which comes from their 1958 model, and since its introduction, the Black Bay has come out with all different variations from sizes to different styles, a lot of it borrowing from the past, but using modern builds and materials. Now, it took them a while, but in 2015, Tudor introduced their first in-house movement. The caliber MT5621, this was a major development for the brand and marked a move towards greater independence from Rolex. First used in their North Flag model, it's been expanded to other models over the years. Now, if you go over to the Tudor website, what I appreciate is a brand that's been around for almost 100 years. They do a really good job of keeping their watches organized. So there are going to be these main sections. There's going to be the Black Bay. You're going to see sports watches, classic watches, women's watches, and diving watches. Within each of those collections, you're going to see about 5 to 10 different models and then variations of those models having to do with the strap choice, the color, and then just details on the watch, the indices, all that other stuff. As many of you guys know, I own a Black Bay 58, and I love this watch so much that I realized I wasn't even wearing my Rolex Submariner, so I got rid of that thing. I sold it. But seriously, as I just laid out in the history, the quality when compared to Rolex is pretty much the same. But when it comes to price, the affordability is still there. The original reason this company was founded, to be an affordable Rolex, boom, still holds true today. Now, of course, if you buy a Tudor, you're not getting a Rolex. I know for many people, they want the brand, but if you already own a Rolex, if you can look past the brand, the name that Rolex is built up, and you just simply want a quality watch with heritage, guys, you don't have to look any farther than Tudor. In addition, I think if you want something that is more for the younger man, something that's got a little bit more energy, a little bit more fun, is about the tool watch with a bit of style. Guys, that to me is what Tudor is all about. Now, if you're looking to buy any of these watches, down in the description of today's video, I'm going to link over to my favorite discounter. I've probably bought about 20 watches from this discounter, and I highly recommend them. They do have the Black Bay 58. They also have the Heritage Chronograph in blue steel, one of my all-time favorite Tudors, which you won't see on their website. And you need to understand what Tudor does. They make watches available. It'll maybe be up for a few years, and then they remove it from circulation. They probably will bring it back, but I know this one in particular, which for me, I looked at probably 3 times in person, but the size of it, a 42, it was just a bit too big for my wrists. That being said, I love the colors. I love the racing feel. I love the quality. If it just was a little bit more delicate, a little bit smaller, because I've got like 6.5-inch wrists, I wanted something that just fit me perfectly. And this one, yeah, if you're a little bit bigger, you've got maybe 7.5-inch wrists, you're 6'3", this would be a great option for you. But no, the watch I went with, as many of you guys know, was the Black Bay 58. Now, the Black Bay 58 is coming in like 10 variations right now, but the one I stuck with was the 39mm in steel with that black bezel, that black dial, and then, yeah, just the gold indices, really just a stunner of a watch. And the bezel on this thing, don't even get me started. This thing just absolutely so smooth, so nice. I mean, I'd argue it's even better than the Rolex. I also love that it had a 70-hour power reserve. And so right there next to the winding crown, you've got this circular satin brushed steel winding crown tube. Basically, whenever you unscrew a winding crown and you pull it out, you've got this little thin piece of metal between you and the watch. I have to say, I absolutely love that they've got this protection around it, and it gives it such a more robust-like feeling. Now, if you've got a little bit larger of wrists, definitely look at the regular-sized Black Bay. That's going to come in 41mm, and that one right there comes in like 16 variations. So yeah, if you want a little bit of color, you want something that's more plain, guys, you got tons of options. But jumping back over to the guys that got smaller wrists, if you want something, the Black Bay 58 just was maybe a little bit too big for you, you wanted something a little bit different, check out the new Black Bay 54. Now, right now, there's only 2 variations of it. This is going to come in 37 millimeter, although it feels a little bit larger because of the bezel. But what's really nice about this, if you want something like the Black Bay 58, but you didn't like that red dot, you want something a bit more muted, a little bit smaller, this is going to be the perfect watch for you. Another Black Bay I need to mention is the Black Bay Bronze. This one, every time I see it in a store, I asked it for them to pull it out. I want to try it on, and again, because of the size, I'm disappointed. It's a 43, a little bit too big for my wrist. But man, if you ever get the chance to see this thing in person, one thing about the bronze is it will change color over time, especially if you do take it into the ocean. But I think that's one of the beautiful things about it. It inspired me to actually go pick up, what did I get? I grabbed the Yema Superman in bronze, because this watch right here turned me on to the bronze idea, and I was able to find a Yema that fit more of my wrist, and the Superman by Yema is another great watch, by the way. And again, gents, if you're looking to grab a Tudor, down in the description of today's video, I'm linking over to my favorite discounter. I'm going to link to a number of Tudors that I saw are available for a discount. This discounter, I've bought multiple watches from them, but again, I only make money if you decide to purchase there, and if you don't, just go through an authorized dealer. However it is, I know a lot of you guys are going to want to put a Tudor on your wrist. I would highly advise you go into a shop and definitely shop that way and see what it looks like, because that is key. So now let's jump over to sports watches. So their Ranger collection I think is actually really cool, but then again, I'm a big fan. I already had the Rolex Explorer, so I decided to skip on this. And if you want something a little bit fancier, check out the Tudor Royal. This one comes in 70 variations. Really, again, what looks to be a nice dress watch. Not so much to my taste, but I get a lot of people like this. But the main watch in this sports collection is going to be the Pelagos. Now, remember what I was talking about with the Submariner, how Tudor went in a different direction than Rolex. Rolex went towards the fashion end, and the Rolex Submariner to this day is probably one of the most iconic watches you will see out there. That being said, what Tudor did is really interesting. They actually said, you know what? We want a watch that if a diver were to fall to the bottom of the Marianas Trench, that watch would still be working. He would be crushed and dead, but that watch would still be ticking. Now, in all seriousness, I'm not sure the Pelagos would actually survive at the bottom of the Marianas Trench, because it's only waterproof to 500 meters. That being said, this watch is a true dive watch. It's made heavier. It's made beefier. This is actually made to fit over a wetsuit, so it's got that adjuster for you. It's even got a helium escape valve at the 9 o'clock. And made from titanium, not only is it tougher than steel, but it's lighter. Now, personally, I loved the idea of this watch, but practicality-wise, I went diving a couple times, didn't enjoy it that much. And why would I buy a watch like this? Well, that is until I saw the Pelagos 39. Now, this is a practical dive watch that I could get behind. What I love about it, again, is the size. And I think that's the key, which I've mentioned multiple times. You got to make sure when you put a watch on that it works for you. Now, I think right now the Pelagos 39 only comes in steel, or actually titanium, and then it's got that complementary rubber strap. And unfortunately, it's only waterproof down to 200 meters, which still makes it an amazing dive watch. But I think the practicality of they wanted a watch that is going to fit and be more for people that aren't diving day to day, but want the look, appreciate the heritage. And really quick, a shout out to the Pelagos FXD Chrono. This as well is a beautiful watch, a little bit large for my taste, but I know a lot of you guys love a good chronograph, and the quality here, second to none. And by the way, if celebrity endorsements are important to you, you want to see actually who is wearing these out in the open, check out guys like David Beckham. He's a huge fan of Tudor. Actors Tom Cruise and Will Smith. And this last one I thought was really interesting. Apparently Tudor had sponsored the New Zealand All Blacks. As many of you guys know, one of the greatest rugby teams of all time. And that makes a lot of sense. Put a high quality, affordable, tough watch on a bunch of guys going around crushing other men. And with that being said, gents, what video to watch next? How about my watch collection? What are the watches that I actually wear in my collection? I've got quite a few, guys. Find out in this video right here. I linked to the watches that I actually wear in my watch collection. So boom, check it out right here.